Brilliant, thank you.
Thank you, and welcome to this meeting of South Oxfordshire District Council Cabinet. My name is David Ruane, the leader of the council. I'll be chairing the meeting. All of the cabinet are actually in the room, but we should probably do a roll call just so that people's faces get noticed online. So if you do the roll call, no need to tell us that you're in the room.
Thank you, Chair. So in alphabetical order, Sir Peter Paul Barker.
Present.
Brilliant. Robin Bennett.
Present.
Simon Casey Reed. Am I pronouncing that correct? Thank you. Maggie Philippa Riggers. Present. Thank you. Georgina Heritage.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Sam James Laurie.
Present.
David Run.
It's me. Yep.
And Anne-Marie Simpson. Present. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. So obviously no apologies for absence. I don't have any. Item 1 is Chair's announcements. I don't have any other than to say that we are joined by, we have 3 officers in the room. Becky from Democratic Services, who will keep me in line. The Chief Executive, who will distract me away from the line. And we have other officers online and William Macraw in the room who will join us for different items should we need arise. Minutes of the last meeting, I would assume that everyone's read them. Is everyone happy that I sign them as a correct record? I think Maggie putting her thumb up means she's proposing that. Can I have a second there? Sam, and everybody in favour? Thank you. Sign those at the end of the meeting. Item 4 is declarations of interest. Has anyone got any declarations of disclosure of pecuniary interest, other registrable interest or non-registrable interest, or any conflicts of interest in respect of items on the agenda of this meeting? General shaking of heads around the table, so I'll take that as not. Obviously, if something occurs to you, then tell us at the time. Item 5 is urgent business. I don't have any urgent business to notify, I don't think. Item 6 is public participation. Do we have anyone registered participate?
No, Chair. No.
Thank you. Item 7 is recommendations and updates from other committees. Now, this came as a separate document because there are the updates that we noted at the last meeting actually refer to this meeting. So there is a paper that says recommendation from other committees to Cabinet on the 19th of September, which was when we noted them, but worth reminding ourselves because item 1 on there is the Joint Scrutiny Committee who were looking at the waste resources and street cleansing strategy, and they made some recommendations, 5 recommendations there, which you can read. We also had the Climate and Ecological Emergencies Advisory Committee, which looked at the 2 net zero reports that we have on our agenda for tonight, and they made recommendations, which also you can see there. They made 2 recommendations on the operational activities and another 2 on the district-wide.
Sorry, Chair, I've not seen this on
Monday.
recommendations for 10th of October, was it? Have I got the wrong one?
I think Becky sent it Monday, didn't you? So the recommendations for Cabinet on the 10th of October was sent as a supplement. So I've got a copy here conveniently.
Oh, thanks.
I believe Chair is referencing the one that went to 19th of September.
I see. So you're
Right.
right.
To today's items.
I thought that one. I got that
because the recommendations we received from the last set of committees refer to things we're going to be looking at the next Cabinet meeting.
Yes.
And the ones we received last time refer to this. So we slipped out of step a little bit. So I asked for it to be recirculated. which you should have it on an email from Monday. So,
Yes, I believe in.
okay.
Do the public have them?
So they are published to the website and available.
That's where, yeah.
And they would have been published as part of the public pack for last time.
Yeah.
Okay, so bear those in mind when we come to discuss those items. So we'll move to item 8, which is operational net zero targets. And if I introduce that, there's quite a lot of overlap between the operational and the district wide, so I may stray onto both topics. But if you recall, 5 years ago, we set ourselves some very challenging targets for achieving net zero. First of all, as a council, but then secondly, on the district as a whole. Obviously, on the council, we can control a lot of what we do, whereas for the district, we can influence, we can control some, but a lot of what happens with the district is outside of our direct control. There has been quite a lot of success, and in the last 15 years, our carbon emissions as a council have actually gone down by 47%. So that is not to be sneezed at. If the rest of the world were doing that, then we probably wouldn't feel quite so worried as we do about the onmarch of a climate disaster. If you look at what we as a council do, there are two major areas where we generate lots of carbon. And that, if I take those two, then that will tell you why we have in part reduced our carbon emissions, but also tell you why we're struggling to meet net zero within the timetable that we set ourselves. The two big areas of carbon emissions from our direct activities are, first of all, our leisure facilities, which, as you can imagine, a swimming pool takes a lot of warming, and with the best will in the world, people still complain to me that leisure centres aren't warm enough, or other people complain that they're too warm. You can please everyone. But what we have been doing is to try and decarbonise the heating systems of those facilities using grants from the Public Buildings Decarbonisation Fund. So we have projects at the Didcot Wave, at Tame and at Wheatley to decarbonise those by fitting solar panels, by installing heat pumps, by improving insulation. The sort of things that you would do to your own home if you were trying to decarbonise. We have further plans going forward for places like Cornerstone and for the swimming pool support fund. We have exploring possibilities for Henley and Berrinsfield. So we're making quite big steps in terms of our leisure facilities. They are large buildings and they're heavily used, and because of the nature of the activities they're taking, they use a lot of energy. So that's a success story. What's less of a success story is our other big pillar of carbon generation, and that is our waste collection services. And we had hoped that technology would have moved on more within the waste recycling industry, and in particular our waste vehicles. It always surprises people when I tell them how many waste vehicles we have, because people tend to think that there's the one that collects their rubbish and there's probably one in another road, just up the road from them. They don't realise that we actually have 98 waste vehicles. and they are all at the moment, or until very recently, all diesel fueled. We have had a couple of experiments of trying to have electric vehicles, and we have purchased our first electric vehicle, which is, and this will tell you the issue, it's for the food collection, which is the smallest of our vehicles. The problem we are having is that we anticipated that the technology, whether it was hydrogen or biomass or whatever else it was going to be, or electric vehicles, would have moved to the stage that we could have been looking to transfer our fleet. That has not been possible. The nature of the geography of our district is that electric vehicles struggle to cover the length of the district. We have heard of other councils who have been able to take on electric vehicles. They tend to be concentrated geographical areas. So I understand that Oxford City has quite a few electric vehicles. And we heard, Facebook always likes to inform you of these things, that South Cambridgeshire, which is not a dissimilar district to us, had purchased some electric vehicles. But on further investigation, we find that in the way that we have a joint contract with Vale, they have a joint contract with Cambridge City. And so the new electric vehicles that they were using were essentially doing the shorter city run in the same way that Oxford City has able to use them doing their city runs. So that has been a major problem for us in not reducing our emissions as part of our operations. There are other parts of our operations where we are operating, where we are making changes as well. But those are the two big ones. And what this paper is asking us to do is to recognise, first of all, if we were to stick to the target we set ourselves, what we would have to do, and in a sense, to recognise that that's not practical for us to do at the moment. But what we're also not wanting to do is to sacrifice our principles. We do still want to drive to an ambitious target. So setting the target back a little makes it more realistic, but also sets a challenge for us that we do need to keep pushing on the different areas where we can decarbonise our activities. I'll stop there because, as we know, this is one of the subjects where everybody around the table is an expert and knows about their bit. But my proposal is that we adopt the officer's recommendation of deferring our target date for our operations to 2030 instead of 2025. But I'd be interested to hear other people's views. If you missed it, that was me proposing the officer recommendation. Could I have a second for that, please? Sam Gentilori. Thank you. Would you like to speak now or speak later? In which case, shall we hear what other people have got to say on this? Councillor Parker.
I'll go first. Yeah. Well, I mean, I was pleased that we set the target that we did at the time, and we knew it was incredibly ambitious. But that was the whole idea of it, was to really get a step change in the level of attention and the level of investment and activity in this whole area. And I think that has been achieved. And as you say, Dave, what we found along the way is that there are some areas of council operations where, for the moment, it's not possible to decarbonise. And that's due to factors beyond the control of, a small district council in Oxfordshire. So I think it's absolutely the right approach. We've got a number of very good proposals in the paper for the next 5 years where, there's a lot of activity where we're getting investment into decarbonisation of the estate. But clearly the technology around the waste vehicles is going to be the critical one in making a large dent in the remaining sort of carbon budget that we have. But so in general, yeah, I go along with SEAC's recommendation, which puts us in line actually with the other councils in Oxfordshire. So, you know, I think that's a good outcome.
Councillor Philip Rose.
Yeah, so thank you. I also agree that although when we first started, it was a very ambitious target, we also didn't have the capacity within the council that we needed to look at feasible scenarios, but also the goalposts are moving, things are changing. It's an incredibly dynamic environment within which we are operating. So I think it is right that we set an ambitious yet realistic target this time around. The way that I see it, there is specifically around operations, two reasons why it hasn't been able to do more. One of them are kind of technological issues, and the other one is around funding. And I think had we had more funding from government, I think we could have made even more progress. And to that end, I want to congratulate our leisure team who have secured quite a lot of grant funding, which has been highly competitive to enable us to progress some of the projects are listed in the report, so I won't repeat them. And just to note that some of those haven't been delivered as yet, so they will have a further effect on our decarbonisation trajectory going forward. So I'll leave it there, but just to say, yes, I think that's sensible, and I support the proposal.
Councillor Casey-Ray.
Thank you. Yes, well, I was on the SEAC committee that proposed the initial 2025 target, and I remember very well us discussing it at the time and saying how ambitious it was, and how it was about focusing minds, I think, as others have said, and how important that was. And I think that's really clear that that's happened, and we've sort of turned the council's focus, very much on that, and I'm really pleased about that. I think also in the officer's report, it talks about how the COVID pandemic, held us back. It just meant that we had to take resources away from this. I think that's an incredibly important warning to us and to wider government and other governing institutions that, one crisis shouldn't really be distracted from another crisis. They are all crises, and they're all facing us, and it's a stark warning. I think it's really helpful, this the report, the way it's set out with the different scenarios and how they're cumulative, so that's very clear. I'm just looking at the risks and just wondering a little bit about those, where it says the last but one, when it talks about the council's baseline emissions like to increase over time as a result of a whole range of things, one of which of course is expansion, new housing developments, etc. So more demands on the council. So just thinking about how, and I think it's been taken into account to a certain extent here, but just thinking how that's going to put further pressure on a new target. And I'm actually happy with this target, but I think it's something we've really got to bear in mind, that we've got an expansion of the district, we've got more things coming into the council, for example, more housing or a housing supply, things like that. So they're things that I think we need to bear in mind. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bennett.
Yeah, I mean, I also support the new target, but I do agree the fact that we had the 2025 target, which was based on, I guess there's always going to be a tension between what the science requires us to do, and we know that really, ideally, we'd not be emitting any carbon now. That's the reality, but we are where we are, and having that ambitious target helped us have the momentum to make sure that we have. And you can see we've got three or more of the climate team on the call on the meeting today. There was only one. In fact, there wasn't actually a climate officer at all when we came in. And as well as the context of the pandemic, we've been operating in the context of a government that by the end was had ministers quoting conspiracy theories in government policy documents, things like that. So it was not a favourable government environment to be trying to be progressive on climate. So I think we've done really well. And And certainly I've had the same portfolio more or less for nearly 6 years now. And I've seen the change in that team. And we have the recommendation that of segmented and nuanced targets. I'm not quite sure how we're going to action that. I'm sure that you'll be thinking about how to action that, Chair. But certainly I know from the departments I work with that the whole this mentality is spread across the whole organisation. And like to take the example from economic development, we've just run a free course in retrofitting skills across South and Vale with a really good take up. So it's all very well saying we want to transition immediately, but we do need the skills, not just in the council but in districts, which we'll talk about later. But I know we've done a lot of the groundwork towards that. And I've often seen the 2025 target and the other ambitious targets quoted in things like planning applications and quoted by site promoters. And so it's definitely been a good communication tool and conveyed that ambition. And I think we could also, as it's set out on the paper, we could spend money on buying carbon credits, but apart from being more or less meaningless, that wouldn't be a good use of funds. It's interesting to see the research on insetting and local carbon markets. That could be something we look at in the future when that's developed. But I think we're doing the right thing and not just spending money to make ourselves look good.
Anyone else in Heritage?
I was just going to just in agreement really that we're aspirational but we're honest, and I think what we have been able to affect so far has been done very well, and as commented by Councillor Philippa Rivers. I get that. I think that a huge amount of work's been done to decarbonise. The various teams have worked really hard to achieve it. There's a lot that we have affected. There's always going to be stuff out there that we can't influence, but that's not to say that we won't remain aspirational. It's not to say that we won't endeavour to meet the target before the target if that's at all possible. It's just that we're honest in our situation, and I think that's the right way to be, and I support setting the new target.
Anyone else, or shall I sum up?
Seconder,
would you like to speak?
No, please sum up.
I guess the summing up is that this isn't a meaningless choice. We could decide that we're going to push on to this initial target, and we could buy carbon credits, but we know that market doesn't really exist, or in a reliable sense. One of the things we are doing is working across Oxfordshire on a route map that would help all Oxfordshire authorities progress. And with the local nature partnership, we're looking at generating a local market for credits, which I would feel a lot more comfortable with. Paying money to an international broker who guarantees that they're going to save a bit of the Amazon rainforest, and we have no way of policing that. It just looks like throwing money away. Giving money to somebody like, for example, Bebout, who manage nature reserves or manage land around Oxfordshire, that we can go and visit and see what work is done, feels different. So, I mean, there are things we could do. We were urged, if you remember, during our budget discussion by one councillor to go out and buy electric vehicles, even though they don't work. So we were accused of hypocrisy for buying, for agreeing to buy some more diesel ones, but 300,000 plus a pop, going out and buying an electric vehicle that we know doesn't meet our needs would be tokenism, and would also mean that our bins didn't get emptied. So we could make grand gestures, but I think what we're suggesting here is a pragmatic recognition of where we are, and saying that we want to carry on doing what we're doing to get down there. So that's my summing up. Can I see those in favour of the proposal? That's everyone. Thank you. So we now move on to.
Do you want some blank paper?
I'm
Writing
writing
a
on
cup.
my coffee cup.
He's reducing his
Reuse, it's very
carbon.
Reusing.
I am
By
living,
item 3, you will have run out of space.
I am living my values.
Can I ask a quick question before you move on? I think at SEAD there was a comment around having a
The segmenting of targets.
no. What is it? A glossary somewhere. Did we do that? Did we do that?
That's for the waste resources
Oh.
paper.
Probably won't be a bad idea.
It's never a bad
To do
idea.
it with this as well, because there's so much jargon.
Yeah, that's why William's here when you get to that. Yeah, the recommendations from SEC were around, there was one around segmenting of our measures. And I spoke to the team, and we essentially do that because we measure each individual part before we look at the total. And so it's just, I guess, publishing a more granular data than we currently do, but it's not new data that we need to collect. Moving on to item 9, which is the same question but for the district as a whole, and you'll see in the paper there are concentric circles of these are the things that we have control over and these are the things we influence. There are a couple of big things that I think affect what is happening within the district that we would wish were different. And the biggest contributor to carbon in the district is private housing, and so or domestic housing.
Social housing.
So it's housing, and we would like that to be different in 2 ways. One is retrofitting, because we have some old stock, housing stock. We have some very new housing stock that needs retrofitting. And that is ludicrously complicated. We've just come through retrofitting our house, and we, interested and informed as we are, had to employ somebody to come up with a work plan for us on how to do it and to get the best value. And I feel that it is too complicated. We've tried to generate skills training. There is a lack of skills within the sector for people to come and do that work, which is something that we've urged Oxfordshire to work on. But also, there has been an inconsistency in government approach in that grant systems come in that you can apply for grants for to help you with a particular piece of work, and then they go disappear again. One of the last things I did in my proper job before I came here was dancing on the steps of the Treasury about the feed-in tariff subsidy that was being my one and only adventure into flash mobbing. It's available on YouTube. But the fact that government keeps changing their mind about what policy they're going to promote means that people are confused and people don't make decisions about investing. It's, you have to invest several £1,000s, and for most of us that's a big deal. And doing that without the certainty of what sort of support you're going to get and what the quality of the work is going to be is really difficult. So that is one thing that we would hope that the new government might try to address. The other thing that we can influence, but also we had hoped that we'd be able to influence more, is planning regulations. It is, I think it's probably the most common question I get asked when I talk about this subject to the public, is why are new houses being built without solar panels or with poor insulation? And I don't have a satisfactory answer. We can't make developers have more than the national standard. We can try, but we can try to persuade, but all we can do is persuade, and we're talking to businesses who have a bottom line that they're looking at very hard. Unless the government gives us the powers within the national policy, planning policy framework to insist on that, then we're building houses that need retrofitting from day one. And that has been a really serious issue for us. So the district net zero target is further away than the one that we can control, and we're saying here that it's likely to slip to 2045. It's still ahead of the government's target, but again, maybe we should show confidence in the new government. They will take a different approach and make it easier for that to come forward. That's my proposal, is that we accept the recommendation to move that target back as well, for the same reasons as on the previous article. Can I have a seconder for that, Councillor Bennett? Do you like to speak now?
I'll wait till the end.
Actually, would anyone else like to speak on this? I'm conscious that you might have already said under the last item things that you might want to say on this. Councillor Kisarera.
I did just want to say one thing that I think maybe the report could be a little bit clearer on, and that's in those nice concentric circles on page 24. There is a bit that says that we have little or no influence over transport, domestic emissions, blah, blah, blah. I think, considering we're the planning authority, and then considering that the circle at the bottom that says, underneath that says figure 2, that domestic emissions is 25%, transport is 41%. I think our influence as a district council on transport could possibly go into that intermediate influence, because as a planning authority we do have some influence on it, even though we're not the transport authority. It's just a bit of a pernickety thing that I think maybe we should be changing that and thinking a bit more from the planning perspective. But I didn't have anything else to add.
Else? Councillor
Yeah, just to say that, we always were aware that South Oxfordshire could never be an island of operational net zero in a Britain that isn't, so we have to be aware of national trends as well, because this is all the stuff that's effectively outside control, private housing, private transport and so on. Transport's actually the biggest slice, according to the figures in the document, at 41% of the emissions. And we know that things are changing fast on transport, not fast enough, but they're heading in the right direction. And domestic, has already been mentioned, is, the technologies are available for domestic net zero, but it's the cost, isn't it? It's a large investment. Plus, there are still scandals in the media about initiatives for retrofitting, for example, which have gone badly wrong and ended up damaging people's houses. And it's still an area that's not that well regulated, well managed. And as you mentioned yourself, David, is an area that we all struggle with in terms of actually modifying existing properties in the right way. So it's, there's, coupled with the large investment that's needed, it's not surprising that isn't happening overnight. And I think it was Robin that mentioned that, the skills initiative is one that we've been really proactive on with other stakeholders in Oxfordshire. And I saw that featured as well, flyer through the door on local radio and so on. And it's been noticed, and it's very effective, I think. People are very keen to adopt these technologies in terms of their skills, in terms of their future work and so on. And anything we can do to make that easier is the right thing for us to be doing. But I think given, where things are nationally, we don't have a lot of choice of changing the step.
Simpson.
Yeah, I was just going to say I like these coloured concentric rings, and I particularly like the fact that it's actually pulled out strong influence. The fact that we have strong influence over planning policy and decisions, and of course we have placed with the work that we're doing with our emerging joint local plan action on climate change very much at the centre and golden thread throughout it, and transport comes into that as well with the policies that we're sort of pushing through there. So I welcome that highlighting there. We've done what we can. We're doing what we can, and very much in line with also our corporate plan objectives.
Anyone else? Rivers?
Kind of make it really emotional, but over the past couple of days, I stayed up through the night watching what's happening in America with this huge hurricane, and also previous weeks with what is happening to the very people of this district, with properties being flooded and these much more frequent weather events, severe weather events that we have. And so I think it is gutting to have to move the target. I think for all of us, I don't think anybody is doing it lightly, but it is just that our hands are tied until we have more investment into this area of work nationally and one which trickles down to us. So I think it is realistic to do that, and I certainly think we are trying and will continue to try. But yeah, it is what it is.
Councillor Bennett, would you like to?
Yeah, I think it's important that our target is ahead of the legal government target of 2050, which it still is. I think Oxfordshire, early on in our administration, we realised that we had to work with other authorities to kind of pool our efforts, and you've spoken about that already on the work that's gone on at the Future Oxfordshire Partnership and NASRAMAT, as it's now called. We don't know what that acronym stands for, but a net zero route map for Oxfordshire. Oxfordshire worked with the Environmental Change Industry Institute and top academics. So it's what if we refer to a report that UK 100 did, and we're now a member of UK 100 thanks to SEAC for pushing us to join that. But their report recommended that government should introduce a net zero local powers bill to permit and require local authorities to deliver an effective pathway to net zero. So we've actually already got the pathway. We just need the powers and funding to do it. And then their other recommendation was a local and national net zero delivery framework co-designed between local authorities and UK government, overseen by a national net zero delivery unit. And as others have mentioned, ministers should end competitive short-term funding and replace it with strategic needs-based long-term funding. So I think others have already mentioned those points. We need that to happen. And luckily there are 100 plus councils lobbying government now to make that happen. So we can only hope that the government's actions match their stated ambitions. We do get some of those new powers, because then we might be able to influence a bit more of that very pretty graphic, which I think I said before would make a nice t-shirt. So
Really?
As amended. And I'm just in the ONS remap document. It refers to a joint action plan, which I gather is being worked up, and some version of that will be coming to pop soon. So we can see, and I guess the important thing is to make sure that we push our partners and ourselves to just keep working through that action plan and taking on exciting new powers when we get them.
Thank you for that and for the fashion tip.
Maybe it was just me.
As a former mathematician, I should point out that these are not consent. But anyway, thanks to everybody for their comments. I would like to say something about transport policy. I mean, there are bits we can influence and bits we can't. Much as we might want to put up barriers on the M40 and get people to check their emissions before they come into the county.
The day the M40 was just voted Road of the Year.
Love to know what the criteria is.
The most number of accidents. Yeah.
But a lot of those emissions come to us via the M40 or the A34 roads that are outside of our control. But the big thing that hits me about transport is public attitudes. I am regularly trolled on Facebook about my supposed part in the war on cars. And we only had to publish a photograph of the cycling repair hubs that we're now installing. There's one at the Wave, there's one at the District Community Centre, which is in the Vale, where if your bicycle's broken down, there's a pump and there's some spanners and whatever else you might need to be able to get you home before you can effect the proper repair. You would think that would be universally welcomed as a good idea. Oh no. 80+ comments on Facebook saying how this is outrageous that we took away one parking space in order to put this in. I pointed out that most of the motorists around there park on the pavement, and so if we put it on the pavement, it would be inconveniencing far more of the motorists than parking spaces. But anything that we post which encourages people to cycle is seen as something which is anti-motorist and an end of civilization. Whereas what we're really suggesting is that for journeys that you don't need a car, that probably shouldn't use it. I have a friend who drives to Aldi. It's actually a longer journey for him to drive to Aldi than it is for him to walk through the Enderby and do his shopping and walk back. But it's the natural reflex to jump in the car and do that journey. So for the good of motorists who are caught up in traffic jams, we urge people when they don't need to use their car to not use their car, to either walk or cycle. That is not a war on cars, but that is adopting a sensible attitude towards transport. And if we did that, then we would make some inroads into the carbon usage within our district. At that, I've brought the debate to a close. I'm proposing the recommendation that we move our target back as proposed in the paper, recognising that it's still more ambitious than the government's target, and also recognising that there are some things that we can directly influence and other things that we have some influence on, but less so. Can I see those in favour of that proposal? Everyone? Thank you. And we move on to...
I think you should spend less time on Facebook too.
Is that another
Distorted view of the world.
People tag me. People tag me and think that I'm going to do something about it.
Those of us who live in the sticks would love the opportunity to not get in a car.
Moving on to our next item 10, which is joint waste, resources and street cleansing strategy. What I would say is this is not discussing any procurement or anything. This is to do with the strategy. If I ask Councillor James Lorry to introduce it, we have William Maxwell with us, who I'm guessing wrote most of this document. So if people have questions, we might refer to him, particularly on technical or acronyms.
The strategy in front of us today, created jointly with Vale, is one which sets out ambitions for the district in how we all want to manage household waste resources and the conditions of our streets. We all know that we have a great record when it comes to recycling performance, and our waste service is considered good by residents, but the status quo cannot remain. Changes in legislation will impact what we collect. Financial and commercial pressure on the council mean we need to find more efficient and effective ways of working. and we need to tackle the climate emergency on which waste services have a significant impact. We also know that street cleaning services need to evolve with clearer information about who has responsibility for the different parts within the public realm, and more information about when things are happening. Therefore, this strategy is set out in the direction of travel we want to take as a district towards an improved future. First key thing is to focus on is the waste hierarchy. This is a well established and shows that preventing waste is where everybody's focus should be. To do this, we will involve the public, retailers, partners, organisations and the council working together, all playing their part. Where waste does arise, we need to increase the amount reused before it ends up in the bins for the council to collect and recycle as much as possible. This strategy also recognises the key link between waste and street cleaning, with litter on our streets, pub roads and public spaces being a blight on our communities and the environment. We want to work with local stakeholders to find the best ways to keep streets clean and tidy, and the strategy sets the path for more communication and cooperation at a local level. The strategy clearly sets out 8 principles to work to, and the council will develop its future action plan around these. Actions for consideration include supporting more repair cats and volunteer litter picking groups, increasing the different types of items we can recycle, having more direct influence on the provision of services, working with partners to improve the cleanliness of our roads and streets, and taking firmer action against those that fly tip and litter. But one key piece of work will be to communicate with these messages loudly and repeatedly so that we can all work towards the kind of community we want to live in. I recommend this strategy is approved, accepting that any major changes in the future will be delegated to the head of services to resolve in consultation with me. Officers from the waste team are available here to answer questions you have.
Can I ask formally who's going to second this? Mr. Heritage, before we move on to the secondings, do people have any questions that they want to raise about the report? In which case, I'll refer them to William. If not, I'll ask him if he's got anything to add to that. And do you have anything that you'd like to add?
I was ready for a load of questions to answer.
No, you can't. That's all the answers anyway.
I just think it's interesting to link to the item on carbon reduction, because I think the impact of a lot of what's in the strategy affects what I think was described. That's my notes I was making earlier as an intermediate influence. It's something that by reducing the amount that people are needing to buy because they're reusing stuff, by looking at the stuff they reduce as waste, so there's less stuff for us to collect, has those lateral benefits of meaning that there's less stuff that has to be, dragged as minerals out of the ground, manufactured, sold, used, disposed, reprocessed. The whole cycle continues. So this strategy very much, I think, lends itself to having multiple impacts. I think it's good news for individual residents who can make more out of the stuff they have. It's good news for us if we can reduce the amount we have to collect. And it's good news for the environment because it drives down those emissions.
Thank you. I should also point out that Paul Fielding is our Head of Housing and Environment, and Scott Williams, who runs our waste collection service, are both also online. Councillor Heritage, would you like to speak now, or
was there a couple of questions?
Oh, sorry,
Yeah.
Robin.
Okay, well, William, I just wanted to ask about a couple of things about sort of street cleansing, and which is something that we do actually, well, when it goes wrong, we get a lot of contact about it as councillors, and just the stuff about partnership arrangements and working. And well, firstly, on the macro level with the county council and highways, the one that comes up a lot for us is when the hedgerow trimming happens and then suddenly waste becomes visible. Are there any barriers to the partnership working there, or is it just a case of tends to happen quite? Do you get warned and is the more that the other organisations can be doing to improve partnership working. And then the secondary talks about engaging with like parishes and towns, more localised street cleansing and waste bins and so on. Is that something that we're looking to do a lot more of under the strategy?
I think that's more of an operational question, and Scott Williams is on lines. He's got his hand up.
Brilliant, thank you, Chair. Yeah, just to pick up on that, we currently have good working relationships with the County Highways team, but quite often they have contracted work, so it's contractors that are performing the duties, and we don't always get told when things are happening. You know, perhaps if there's bad weather and they've pulled something, they're not going to do it that day. So what we're looking to do is just sort of foster better relationships, primarily with the contractors through County Highways and Oxfordshire County Council, to ensure that we're sort of jumping on opportunities to, you know, litter pick when they're doing road closures, for example. So yeah, it'll be very much building on that.
Thanks, Scott.
Sam,
Thank you. Yeah, it was a bit similar lines. It's just wasn't quite sure in the officer's report rather than the strategy. It might be illustrated better in the strategy. On the street cleansing, when you've got those key themes, you've got clean streets in partnership with and sensitive to local needs. I wasn't quite sure what you're trying to say there. With whom is it? And again, along the lines of what Robin was saying, is it with parishes? Is it with the county councils? Is there a new way of thinking for this?
Yeah, Scott.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I mean, very much so. That there are two ways of approaching street cleansing. It's either this sort of binary approach where it's a bit like a milk round, and you cleanse on a certain day, and no matter whether or not the street needs cleansing, you do it anyway, or you do it dependent on need. And obviously you tailor your approach, then you tailor your resources to suit that. But in order to get that intelligence on when something might need to be cleansed, we need the sort of eyes and ears on the ground, and that's where local communities come in. So we want to foster better relationships with local communities, and it's basically the sort of three tiers, supporting sort of local government, that you've got the parishes, local communities, community groups, volunteers. You've then got the district councils, and you've then got the county council. So it's just fostering better relationships and being better informed ultimately.
Anyone else?
Is it questions or?
Still on questions at the moment. Anyone?
My question is, how on earth do I get my husband to recycle? While he's having to rummage through the recycling and everything. I say this to jest, but in terms of our work with individuals, I think I'm happy to offer him as a guinea pig. And I will show him this recording later.
There is so much to unpick from that.
Any marriage guidance or something you can offer?
Well, I'm glad there's one expert in the house anyway. So that's it. I mean, the two things which are really interesting is that people are losing confidence that their recycling is actually recycled. So there's a piece of work to do to pick up on that, to remind people, to give evidence of where it goes and how it's sorted and how it comes back as new materials. So that'll give comfort, if you like. The other thing is it's not unique, that there are people who are really interested in keen, and there are people who are less bothered. And what we're looking to do is to try and provide a role for those people. And so zero waste champions, people who can become local influencers in the wider community. May not work in your house, but I'm sure. I mean, the basic principle of this one is that people can look at all sorts of evidence that the council or authority produces, but they often notice what their residents, their neighbours are doing.
Can I just congratulate you on actually giving a serious answer to a really
And I'd like to offer another serious answer, which is use the children. Use the children. If Indy gives him one of her looks and tells him to recycle, then I suspect that he will.
Definitely be for sure.
Yeah. Any other questions? In which case we'll move on to debate.
Yeah, I'd just like to thank you, because I think it's a really good document, and I think starting from the point that we are top recyclers in the country is a good one to have in there as well. And I feel really confident that the work that you've done and officers have done to pull this together will already start helping inform and change behaviours, because already I'm finding it engaging and interesting to read as a member. And I know it's strategy and it's high level, but I'm quite excited about what's going to come out from it with the detail. So I just want to say well done, and I'm looking forward to seeing how we move forward with this.
Anyone else?
Well, I just wanted to agree with what Anne-Marie said. And I think it is whatever the opposite of complacent is, if you are top, and then also producing a really detailed report on how you can change and improve and maybe make it harder for ourselves to be top of that particular chart because we're looking at things more holistically. I think that's very commendable, and it is an excellent report.
If I can add, I gave a talk a couple of weeks ago to Sustainable Didcot, their annual meeting, and somebody called me at the end and said, I think my takeaway from what you said was we need to buy less stuff and throw less stuff away. And I said, well, yeah, if that's your takeaway, then I've done my job. But it's also, I'm harking back to the previous debates. That was a room full of very environmentally aware people, and I said, do anybody here going to claim that they live a net zero lifestyle? And we're remembering that we all, as good as we are, obviously we have that. Just be honest, I put my bins out today, and Marie will testify just before we left. And we generate very little in the grey bin, but we generate something which we probably shouldn't.
Just really quickly, for me, just to try and dig myself out of the hole. Not helping. But I think it is really excellent that we are, our communities, we as communities rather than we as councils are really good at recycling, bar my husband. But, generally, obviously this is recognised, and obviously garden waste, etc. really help with that. But I think, the next challenge is about this, reusing. And just today, actually, I bought 2 second-hand dresses, and I'm really proud of that. That actually, I would say probably now, about 50% of my wardrobe is second-hand. They are like really nice brands. Yeah. And I mean, I'm thinking about the transport of them coming to me, but I think textile can be very polluting as an industry. It's really a good thing, but yeah, quite big percentage. And for those of you who have got to know me over the past few years, I quite like fashion, less and less so as I get older, but I do quite like it. And so it's quite a big change for me to kind of do most of my wardrobe into secondhand, and likewise for the kids' toys. A lot of it now is secondhand as well, and still a lot and annoying and plastic, but it is at least secondhand. And yeah, so I think sometimes it is about making those little changes. And over time, kind of building, well, hopefully not over too long of a time, but, building on those. I think that what people find overwhelming is that, they are asked to do a lot and change a lot, but actually these incremental changes can also help. So, yeah.
And can I just add that I think it's really great to see this report and to hear what you were saying in the other reports, because it just shows that you've got this really wide and understanding of the issues, but also the ambitions and how to make those improvements all the time. And I think that's just really, really excellent. Even I'm just looking at the fact that you're thinking about how to collect the street cleansing, how to collect the rubbish, and how to recycle that, because at the moment it's not. And your understanding of what you're saying before about people's concerns about where the recycling is going, and it's not actually being recycled. So I think it's really clear that you've got a really great understanding of where we need to be and where we need to go. I would say that it's really important that councils do these things, because I differ from David and Maggie a little bit here, and I think the most important thing is that the systems are in place for people to be able to live the life they want to live, which is that sort of recycling. It's not about individual actions. Individual actions are important, but we need to absolutely facilitate those. So yeah, great report and great strategy. Thank you.
So a quick extra thing, just to, now I've found the correct document, just to acknowledge the comments from Joint Scrutiny Committee. Particularly I think some of the most fairly simple, like changing the font to make sure it's readable. But the fifth one about working across council teams, it did strike a chord with me because it says, can we include targets within licensing for events, planning, procurement, etc. No procurement, we're looking at doing a lot more work on procurement, so that's something we can take on board. Maybe declare an interest as I do run an event which is licensed by South Oxfordshire District Council. But it's a good point because I know from doing that, and it's not something that's covered by licensing currently, but it's actually it's a commercial waste issue which is dealt with by the county council, not us, but it's a partnership working thing. You actually can't dispose of food waste within Oxfordshire at the moment from a commercial business, which doesn't help our overall county waste target, because you have to actually take it outside of the county at the moment to a commercial facility. So there's some things like that, that in our partnership working, but that's more the county council's issue, but definitely are issues there.
Sam, would you like to sum up?
Yes. When I first saw the strategy, apart from thinking that the pink was far too bright in it, it did make me, oh no, the colour scheme. It did make me rethink, which is, the third R about how I recycle and how my family recycles. And that was really, it was very nostalgia feeling. I'm, as you all know, a 90s child. I remember the It's Not Easy Being Green TV adverts. And it certainly spurred me on to try and teach my children a bit more about recycling. So the report itself is fantastic, and I do hope it gets voted through.
Okay. Can you see those in favour of adopting this strategy? That's everyone in here. Okay. Thank you. I think that is the end of the meeting. If we could end the meeting.
We've got some really good weavers, recycling wheels. Have you got some of those?
Just
Is it okay?
I think
Bertie, can you confirm the webcast is on?
Yeah.
This is helpful information.
you need those wheels actually.
They're so good.
I actually meant to mention, I think that's some of the education that's really needed, isn't it?